Welcome to Mr. V Teaching Math. Before we can continue any further with the topic of division of decimals, we have to take a short detour into another topic. This topic is extremely important, particularly in my classroom, where from now until the end of the year, every single test will include this topic. So if you're in my class and you're listening, you have to know this. It's not optional. Without it, you will not succeed. And before we can even begin that topic, you must know your place values in the decimals area. You must know their names. You must know that there is only one ones, and then it goes tenths, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s. And of course, if you kept going, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, and so on. You must know the names of these. Otherwise, you won't be able to do this work. So, what we're talking about is rounding. If we're given a number like this, and we're asked to round it. What rounding is we want, sometimes having a number of this many decimals isn't useful to us, but we want a number that's more useful and is close to something. If I told you that you were going to drive 4,728 decimal 623,759 kilometers, it's a whole lot easier to say about 500 kilometers. It's more useful. And so there are times that it is more useful to round. So in this case, this question is going to ask us to round to the nearest tenth. Rounding to the nearest tenth. How close, what is the closest tenth? The first thing we have to do is find the tenth place value. There's only one ones, and then it goes tenths. For those of you who have trouble remembering that, the pattern is exactly the same as going this way, because it goes ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and so on. The only difference is you put a th on the end, and there is only one ones. There's no oneths. It goes ones and then tenths. There's no oneths in here. So, the tenth place value is here. This is where I am rounding to. So I have to ask myself the question. Is this number closer to the 1 here? Or is it going to be closer to the higher number? Is it close to this? Or is it closer to the next higher number? If this is less than 5, it's closer to this. If it's 5 or higher, it's closer to the next number up. Since this is less than 5, we're going to round down. This number is closer to 4.1 than it is 4.2. That's the key question that we're asking. Is this closer to 4.1 or 4.2? And if you think about, let's say there's a line between these two. We'll put a line in here. Where does 0.2 land? 0.2 would be about here. The 2 would be about here. Is that closer to the 1 or closer to the 2? It's closer to the 1. So we're going to round down. Now what that means is you simply cut all of this off, and in the rounded format, rounded to the nearest tenth, that number is 4.1. This is taking this number, rounding to the nearest tenth, that's 4.1. Let's look at another example. Again, rounding to the nearest tenth. So the question is this closer to 3.5 or closer to 3.6? Which one of these is it closest to if we look at the tenth place value? And again, if you think about having that line there between the 5 and the 6, there's a little line there between the 5 and the 6. And if you put 1 here, and you're looking at this, number, if you put a 7 in here, and the 7 would be, about here. Is that closer to the 5 or closer to the 6? Oh, it's closer to the 6 because it's 5 or higher. It's 5 here or higher. I'm going to round up. In other words, I'm going to add 1 to this, and I'm going to eliminate these. So it's going to be rounded to the nearest tenth. That is 3.6 because this is closer to this. That's what rounding is. Which one is it closer to? Some more examples. Once again, rounding to the nearest tenth. I look to the right. Is this number 5 or higher? Because if it's 5 or higher, it's closest to the next number. Is it 5 or higher? No, it isn't. Therefore, this is closest, when rounded, to 2.6. It's closer to 2.6. Again, another example. Rounding to the nearest tenth. I look to the next number. Is this 5 or higher? Is it closer to 1.2? No, it isn't. This will be closer to 1.1 when it's rounded. Now, there's a common mistake that people make. People will sometimes look at all these other numbers back here and go, oh, look how high those ones are. You got to bump this one up, which means you got to bump that one up. No, it's not the way it works. You actually ignore all those numbers. You don't even pay attention to them. All you need is the number after the place value. That's a really important idea to remember. When you're rounding, you need the number after the place value you're asked to round to. That's going to come back later on. Some more examples, now using other place values. 7.265. And now we're going to be asked to round to the 100th place value. All right. There's only ones. Tenths, hundredths. This is the place value we're rounding to. Look to the right. I'm looking at this number. Is this closer to the 7 or closer to the 6? This is 5 or higher. Therefore, it is closer to the next number up. I'm going to round up. Hundredth. Now, there's another way of asking someone to do rounding. Let's say I have this number. And the question says, round to 2 decimal places. Round to 2 decimal places. What it means is I need 2 decimal places after the decimal. 1, 2. There's 2 decimal places. I look to the right. Is that 5 or higher? It's not. Therefore, I'm going to round down to 3.57, simply cutting all of that off the end. It might be 1 decimal place, it might be 6 decimal places. Now, there is another tricky kind of question that you need to be aware of. And for those of you in my class, this is a warning. Expect something like this somewhere along the line, either in our classwork or perhaps on a test. What if you have a number like this? And the question says, please round to the nearest 100. Now, having practiced all these decimals, what's going to almost always happen is that people are going to go ones, tenths, hundredths, and they're going to go over here and they're going to start rounding over here. This is not hundredth. This is hundred. There's no TH here. Where is the 100 place value? 1, tens, 100. Look to the right. This is the number I'm rounding with. Is this 5 or higher? No, it isn't. I'm actually going to eliminate these numbers. It's going to be 796. Now, here's where people make a mistake. They put 796, but it isn't. There's a decimal here. I'm going to have to fill in with 2 placeholders. 79,600. And that is how to round.